Okay, hello there. Hello there. I'm just about to go live. Well, I am live. So if you've joined me, I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes. Be good if someone can give me a shout up and let me know if I'm all good with my audio, if you guys can hear me. Okay, fantastic. Sounds like everything's all good. We'll just give it one more minute. Hopefully you can see me. Hopefully you can hear me. Um, uh, just give people a couple of minutes to join before I start. And we'll start bang on time. I've got a countdown clock here. Okay, so I make the time 5 a.m. in New Zealand. So it's an early morning for me, and really, really exciting to be talking to you across the world. But first, thank you very much to Ray Knightley, the author that we just saw. Fantastic to hear about Ben Archer and the Cosmic Skill series. That was really, really nice to see her in person, meet the author, which is really fantastic. Yeah, very early in the morning. Hi, Rachel. So really, really nice to see just an opportunity to talk to authors, and particularly being at the edge of the world here. So really good to hear a little bit from that prize-winning novel. So thank you, Ray. Really, really, really lovely. So, of course, today I'm going to be talking to you about Taelstone, and there's my book there, which is, it's a really lovely experience to be able to do this because I'm an indie author, which means that I'm pretty much invisible. So it's really, really cool to have the opportunity to meet readers. That's one of the things that us indies have to do to try and get out there. Well, we're busy writing books as well, of course. So Taelstone is my debut novel, and I'm very, very busy writing the second one at the moment. So that's taking up a lot of my time. So at some point, I've got to get my marketing sorted and actually get myself out there. So I'll just let you know about my free giveaway. I'm going to be giving a printed copy of Taelstone away. So if you can hop across, I did make a little sign, but I think this might be backwards. Yeah, I reckon that's probably backwards. In the it looks like it's a mirror, so I'll just tell you. So hop across to robynprokop.com, sign up to my newsletter. You can obviously unsubmit anytime you like, but that will put you in the draw. I think I do a newsletter about once a month. I don't really bug my readers that often. So yeah, you're lucky if you get once a month actually. So hop across there and be in to win. That is my own competition, not in association. Oh, this is the right way around for the audience. Thank you. So not in association with Twitter or with Rachel Church's Taller Books. It's my own competition. So a little bit about Taelstone, I suppose. It's a fantasy novel. It's young adult, but it's kind of like the older young adults, so kind of teenagers. I used to be an English teacher, so I guess I wrote this for my students and also for my daughters when they were about 15, 16, and we had been reading The Lord of the Rings as kids, and they said to me, "Oh, well, you should write us one, Mum." So I did. It took me a little while. But this is what Taelstone is about. So I think I'm going to jump in and actually read you a bit first, and then I'll explain a little bit about what I was kind of aiming for there. So yeah, I'm going to hop straight in and do a little bit of reading. So what has happened, this is from fairly early on because I have to avoid spoilers. So what has happened is the Maelstone has come to Milderesh. Now, the Maelstone is like a hermit character, quite creepy. And right at the beginning, he arrives and he does a deal with the first citizen of Milderesh. And he wants 2 slaves to do his bidding, and the deal is done. And the main character, Ash, my invisible boy, I'll tell you about him in a minute. He gets swept into this quest quite by accident and quite against his will. So this bit I'm going to read for you is when he and his friend Brag have gone up the mountain path and they're going to visit this creepy hermit, not knowing what on earth is going to happen. So I'll read to you and then I'll tell you what I'm trying to do at least. Okay. "Right," said Brag brightly. "Let's find out about this quest. Ready?" Ash wasn't ready, and he would never be, but he followed the bigger book to the door anyway. Sorry, the bigger boy to the door anyway. He noticed with some satisfaction that Brag hesitated just for a moment before lifting the curled black door knocker. It fell back with a sharp thunk. They waited, straining their ears for any sound from within. Then, just as Brag went to knock again, the door swung open. The Maelstone wore a heavy, embossed tunic, which perhaps had once been blue. Since it didn't quite reach the floor, they could see his bony ankles above a pair of thin slippers. He leaned heavily on a stick and blinked at them in the light. For one brief, hopeful moment, Ash wondered whether there had been a mistake. But then the Maelstone drew himself up and nodded at Brag, pulling his lips into a gaunt smile. "Ah, my chosen one. Come in." Taking a deep breath, Ash followed Brag over the threshold and into the gloom of the hut. The first thing he noticed was the smell. It was most peculiar, like a combination of old mushrooms and aniseed. He looked around nervously, wishing his eyes would adjust more quickly to the change in light. The hut was much larger inside than he expected, but even so it was filled with all sorts of clutter. The funnel-shaped fireplace occupying one corner was set with a small blaze, despite the summer heat. There, a high-backed chair with curved arms was drawn up almost to the hearth, where a black kettle steamed gently on a tripod. Next to that was a low, round table, bare except for a glass goblet, half filled with dark liquid. Firewood was piled untidily against the wall opposite the fire. The Maelstone adjusted a shutter to admit more light, which came in shafts across the floor. They saw then that every wall was lined with benches and nooks and shelves, even up and over the tops of windows. All manner of curious objects cluttered the bench and hung from the rafters. "Pull up that stool," the Maelstone commanded. "There, near the fire." Ash moved to obey. "Not you!" He froze in his tracks. There was no mistaking that tone of absolute contempt. The Maelstone glowered at him beneath fierce eyebrows, and then he favoured Bragg with a cryptic smile and the slightest of bows. The chosen one. Bragg shot Ash a quick look before shuffling reluctantly towards the heat of the fire. At this point, Ash learned of his own part in the glorious quest. You are here to scrub. A crooked finger pointed at a bucket sitting alone in the middle of the room. You will scrub and you will polish until it shines like glass. As he crept towards the bucket, Ash realised that the centre of the room was laid with some sort of hard, dark matter in the shape of a large triangle. It seemed to suck in the light and looked nothing at all like glass, more like hardened pitch or filthy, matted straw. Getting it to shine was clearly impossible. But he chose a spot as far from the fireplace as he could and sank to his knees. Sick with fear, he began to scrub. Meanwhile, the Maelstrom joined Bragg by the fire and lowered himself into his chair, slowly, leaning heavily on its arms. Then he just sat there, all hunched up, eyes closed, with silver hair trailing across his face. In the silence, Ash became aware of a steady ticking noise. Soon he was scrubbing in time with its measured beat. Time stretched, while the firelight flickered across the Maelstrom's face. Then at long last he lifted his head and fixed Bragg with an intense gaze. I am Crater. His voice was cracked but proud. You will call me Crater, as a sign of respect for my age and wisdom. The paths of my life have been many, but... He paused and gasped a bit, clutching at his chest before continuing. But all you need know is that I am the keeper of the song. A sudden movement in the woodpile behind Ash caused him to jump. He scanned the pile anxiously, but before he could train his ears on the source, the Maelstrom began to cough. And he kept coughing, in horrible, rasping rattles. When he reached for the goblet on the table beside him, Bragg quickly leaned forward to guide it into his shaking hands. The Maelstrom drew it at once to his lips, sucking at the dark contents, which left a black trace down one side of his mouth. After a few minutes, the dreadful spluttering began to ease, and Crater gestured again. The stone, boy! Pass me the stone! He seemed to be pointing at a silver orb set on an elaborately carved plinth which sat nearby on a bench. Ash absolutely understood Bragg's perplexed expression. It looked nothing like a stone whatsoever. Don't touch the stone itself! Here! Bring it here! The contents of the orb swirled like liquid silver as Bragg lifted the plinth. He carried it carefully, his eyes bright with curiosity. Crater snatched the orb to his chest and closed his eyes again. After long minutes of waiting, Bragg began to shuffle on his stool. He kept stealing glances in Ash's direction, but Ash ignored him and kept scrubbing, terrified of what might happen if he stopped. Then, to Ash's absolute horror, Bragg cleared his throat. Please, Crater, he spluttered. Please tell me about the quest. What is it that I'm to do? Ash had to admire his nerve. The Maelstrom grimaced, but he opened his eyes and sat up a little. He took another sip of the black liquid and nodded slowly. The song, boy. You must learn the song. Ash sensed another movement in the woodpile. He jerked his head to look and saw shadows shifting. There! A pair of eyes glinting. Then... nothing. His heart thumped, but he didn't dare move nor stop the rhythm of his scrubbing. I am the keeper of the song. Long have I been its guardian. Crader made a bitter face. But now is the time. The song must pass. They all jumped at the sudden crash. Several logs rolled from the pile. Ash leapt back, jolting water up from a bucket as the voice rang out. It was the clear voice of a woman, imperious, yet curiously muted, as if it came from afar. The Taelstone must go to Tal Jazor. The Malshorn turned his head, his eyes glittering. Be silent! But the voice repeated, The Taelstone must go to Tal Jazor. Enough! With a strangled cry, the Malshorn hurled his goblet at the woodpile. Glass shattered against logs, and the voice fell silent. Ash exchanged a horrified look with Brave. The Malshorn's face twisted and twitched. You, clean that up. And you, another goblet. There, in the cupboard. Ash jumped to obey, but Brave did not move. The peculiar orb was swirling madly now, erupting with light, glowing green then purple beneath the Malshorn's fingers. Bragg stared, as if hypnotised, then his eyes opened even more widely. That's it, isn't it? He said, breathlessly. I mean, that orb, that's the Taelstone, isn't it? Alarmed, Ash held his breath, waiting for the Malshorn to explode. But Crader met Bragg's eyes, paused for a long moment, and then he inclined his head. Indeed. So that is the beginning, right at the beginning of the story, and there you see Ash, who is my very reluctant hero. I based him on a boy that I once taught, who I kind of think of as the invisible boy. And Ash, in my hero, Ash, is based on this student because he was always one of those students that always got marked absent. So I always used to mark this poor lad absent, and he was there in my class, and he'd say, "Oh, don't worry, miss, no one ever sees me. I'm invisible." And so I combined this with another student of mine who actually was called Ash and had kind of ash-coloured, cool, blondish hair, but my hero's got grey hair, so that's where Ash comes from. And I think it's just a case of a book about heroes, and Ash is my unlikely hero, and he combines with Kep, who is my female hero. And I was really pleased to have a review just recently, one of my recent reviews, and someone said, "Oh, you don't really know which one's the hero, whether it's Ash or whether it's Kep." So it's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to have a dual protagonists, and Kep is everything that Ash isn't. She's one of those. She's the one in the playground who would stand up to the bullies and who would be the person to be everything that Ash isn't. He's a background boy, really. So if there are questions that you have, I'm really happy to answer them now. I've got plenty of time, I think. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on there. I'll just scroll down and see if I can see any there. Otherwise, I'm just going to... oh, yeah, is fantasy my favourite genre? That's a really interesting question. Yes and no. I'm really enjoying reading some fantasy now because as an English teacher, I've always had to teach literature, things like Jane Eyre and all sorts of books that are on the curriculum. And I've never really had time to catch up with modern fantasy. So recently I have been, and I absolutely love Robyn Hobb. She's the one that I've recently discovered, which is great for a writer to discover a brilliant writer, but it does make you feel a little bit intimidated because she's really good. And sometimes I have to say to myself, don't measure yourself against someone who's at the top of their game. So she writes epic fantasy, of course. And I've just finished The Wheel of Time, and the Sanderson's completion of that book, and learnt a lot from that. I learn a lot from reading other fantasy writers. But I think I'm pretty eclectic. I'm just reading a crime novel at the moment as well. So lots and lots of things feed into my writing. I'm like a magpie. I think that's what writers are really, aren't they? Like little magpies. So just a little, I'll just kind of talk her up. Do I have a favourite author? I think it is Robyn at the moment. One of my new ones, but I'll read anything from Shakespeare to, anything really. I love reading. It just gets in the way of writing a little bit sometimes when you feel a little bit guilty, don't you? You settle down and you've got a book and you're thinking, I'm not supposed to be reading, I'm supposed to be writing. What do children think of my book? Well, I had a lovely comment the other day. A friend of mine told me that a year 10 boy, so that's 15, was reading my book and really enjoyed it. So that was really good. I think it's one of those books that can be read on different levels. There's quite a lot going on. There's some politics in it, but I think some readers skim it just for the story, which is fine. But there is quite a lot of world building in there. There's a lot about music, and one of the big themes is music and the power of music. And Ash actually, a bit of slight spoiler, but it happens early in the book. Ash ends up having the song in his head, which is the song of all the worlds, which forms visions of history. So I'm really, really interested in music and the impact of music on audiences and the way that it uplifts us. As an English teacher, is there a book everyone should read? Hopefully Taelstone. No, I don't think there is one book, actually. I've taught in Singapore and in Australia and New Zealand, and every curriculum is different. I think people should read as widely as they possibly can, choosing books from all sorts of different types of authors. I think that's super, super important. So no, not one book, because that would lock things in. Even though I do love Shakespeare, I do think it's really there's some really cool new books coming out and authors. And that's what I love about indie writing. Really, is that you really get to see people who never were able to get their work out there. So that's a really cool thing. In New Zealand, that sometimes means Māori writers and. A really different voice for us. Any one author been biggest influence on your work, or is that a musician? I think, funnily enough, my daughter is a musician and singer-songwriter. And as I was starting to write this book, I was watching her writing music and performing, and she's had a huge influence on me. Just watching someone creating music is really interesting. Just the process of it is really interesting, and the way that she captures stories and ideas into her writing as well. So yeah, an ongoing fascination with creativity, I think, is something that's really driven me. So I should probably just remind people who might have just joined that I have a ebooks or Dead Tree books, both. You have to have both. If you can do print on demand, it really helps, though, rather than killing too many trees. But definitely both. I love both. So I'm just going to where am I? I'm juggling devices here. Oh yeah, I've got time to tell you about my free offer. So there we go. There you go. That's my website, robynprokop.com. Head across there, and all you have to do is sign up for my newsletter, and you are in to win. And I will post you a book wherever you are in the world. I'm not sure how long it will take me to get it to you with lockdown, but I will take a photograph of me wrapping it, and I will post it to social media, so at least you'll know that it is coming. I had to wait a very long time for my wishing shelf medal to come. So bear with me. I'll send proof of it happening. So if you are the lucky winner, that's the book that you will be getting. And I, in the meantime, will be working on Heartstone. I have just printed off the first draft of Heartstone. So all my readers who are saying, especially my daughter, my eldest daughter, where's the next book, Mum? When are you going to write the next book? So I am getting on with that. I promise. It is coming, but it's at that horrible, messy stage where there's stuff going on everywhere. And I'm pretty sure I've overshot the mark and started writing book 3, which is not a good idea. We'll see. It was going to be 3 in the series, and I have the sneaking suspicion it might be maybe 5. But we will see. So I think I've just got time to say some thank yous. Thank you so much, Rachel Churcher, for setting all this up in such a fast time. I'm in awe of I'm not a Twitter person, as you may have realised, and I'm in awe of Rachel's incredible design skills and organisation skills. So well done. That was really awesome. And I would like to now tell you to stay tuned for Tanya Lee. The Wolf in the Rain has the most beautiful cover, and I'm really loving to dip into it. It looks fantastic. It's a dystopian work, science fiction dystopian by the look of it, and looking forward to listening to Tanya tell us about that in a few minutes' time. And I've grabbed my copy, so I'll be dipping into that when I get some chance too. So thank you very much for listening in. Hop across and be in to win. And I'm going to sign off now. And thanks for your comments and questions. Bye now.